Hello, it's Paulus here, the Cabaret Geek, and today I'm talking about The Trouble with Sally Bowles. Now, don't get me wrong, in case there are big fans out there, I love Sally Bowles and I love the 1972 performance on screen by Liza Minnelli of the character. Now, this is where our story starts. 1972, a Bob Fosse movie. Here's the DVD version, and it is based on the 1966 stage musical by Kander and Ebb. Kander and Ebb, famous for also writing the musical Chicago, The Scottsboro Boys, Curtains, loads of other things like Kiss of the Spider Woman, and they're brilliant. This movie's brilliant. I love it. But when you become a cabaret performer, you quickly realise that when you go to a party or you meet a stranger and they say, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" and you say, "I'm in cabaret," what people think you've just said is, "I am in a production of the musical Cabaret." And that, the difference between cabaret as a genre and Cabaret, this famous show that people have seen on stage, many people have seen the movie version of, that is very, very tricky thing to just sort of spend the whole of your life trying to explain. What do you do? I do cabaret. What? Oh, you're in the different thing. So that's a problem. But there is another one. Before we get to it, we have to dive a little bit deeper into the history of Sally Bowles. So as I say, this movie is 1972. The stage musical dates back to 1966. But if you go back a little bit further, this film, I Am Camera, hope it's not too shiny on my screen, you can see really closely what they've written under the title, the precursor to Cabaret. This is a film. There's half a song in it where we see the character Sally Bowles there, played by Julie Harris. She's in the nightclub, in her nightclub where she works, singing. And that's a very, very brief song there. But other than that, it's a non-musical story. And this came out in 1955. In 1945, and here's where the story starts, this book, Goodbye to Berlin, is a collection of short stories by a writer called Christopher Isherwood. And within Goodbye to Berlin is a story, and its name, can you guess? Sally Bowles. There she is. So Sally Bowles dates back to 1945, when Christopher Isherwood published this book of stories. And Goodbye to Berlin in general is interesting if you want to read them all. He's a lovely writer, and some of the characters sort of bleed into one story and then another. So I would recommend you sort of bearing that in mind. But you've got 1945, 10 years later, you've got 1955, 1966, they did it on stage, and then in 1972, they did this. Now, why is any of this a problem? Other than I have to say at parties, no, I'm not in the musical. I actually make cabarets and perform in cabarets. The problem is that Sally Bowles, the character, isn't a good singer. And I'm a cabaret singer. Now, this version of Cabaret, Liza Minnelli, there is not one hint of a suggestion that Liza Minnelli's character, Sally Bowles, is not an awesome singer. Sally Bowles here is great, but there are many productions where she is depicted, as in the original, to be not that great. And it's not uncommon to go to a theatre production of Cabaret and for your leading lady to not be the greatest singer in the world. In fact, the lovely Julie Harris in here, the little bit of singing that she does do, the little stage performance that you see, it becomes quite clear that she isn't exactly setting the world on fire, or her career is not exactly doing that either. So why is any of this a problem? Well, I think it's an issue because Cabaret has got a pretty bad reputation for being a byword for crappy, not quite so great, could be better. There have been many instances in modern history of talent judges on TV like myself saying that something is too cabaret, and that is never meant as a positive. They are never going through to judges' houses. They are never going to win the show if something, Gary Barlow or Simon Cowell says something is too cabaret, yeah, they're there for the chop. It's a tremendous shame because what Sally Bowles can do is she can tell stories. But maybe we'll save that for another day. So that's the problem with Sally Bowles, and that's the challenge that we spend our entire lives trying to get over. Can you be a good cabaret performer and have wonderful vocals? Yes, of course you can. There are loads. There are hundreds. But remember where the idea of Sally Bowles and the history of the word cabaret in popular culture comes from, and where, depending on somebody's age and experience that you meet or come across, where those ideas might drop in from. Worth bearing in mind. Also, you know, 2 very interesting films and 1 very interesting book of short stories for you to research too. I hope you do, and I'll see you next time, if we're saved.